It is a beautiful morning. It is 9:05 here at WBSM, and it's actually, well, I hope it's a nice afternoon for Sarah Bartlett, who joins us from France this morning. The book is National Geographic's Guide to the World's Supernatural Places. Sarah, good afternoon. Welcome to our show.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Well, good morning to you. Yeah, it's lovely here, actually. We have lovely blue, clear skies, and it's about 30 degrees centigrade, so I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, I'm afraid.
I would say it's probably about the same, I would think.
Yeah,
I don't have the... So. Yeah, I could not get... Well, I suppose if you live there, you get used to it, but I could not get used to the centigrade scale.
Yeah, I think, I was brought up on Fahrenheit, being very British and slightly older than I appear, and I had to convert to centigrade, but you do get used to it, actually. So.
Now, Sarah has helped to compile this book, the Supernatural Places, and... Is this an interest of yours? I would assume that you were.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm an astrologer by trade, if you like, and I've written so many books about spiritual and sort of mystical things. Anyway, and I've always had this fascination for looking at places and where you can go and actually perhaps experience some kind of either spiritual kind of energy or the sacredness of the place, which are the ones that most people go for. But now there seems to be an interest much more in the sort of darker arts, like are there really vampires, do they exist? And the historical and legendary side of those stories still hangs around, whether it's real or imagined, right. In many places throughout the world. So the book really covers everything from, UFO sighting places to wonderful old castles, particularly many in Europe, of course, which I know better than the places I've had to write about in Asia or America or South America. So
right.
It really is a sort of a whole worldwide trip you can take, either if you have the time and the energy and the money, of course, to go and visit some of these places and try and experience this other sort of worldliness that I believe exists anyway. Or you can just use the book as a sort of armchair book where you can actually use your imagination and experience the energies surrounding these places by reading the book too.
How did you first become interested in this, or as you said, you believe in these spirits and things? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's difficult to say why. I think I fell into astrology first as a way of defining who I was when I was in my early 20s, because it's a very good system to use. It has rules and it's logical and it works with the position of the planets and so on. And I think from there, then I got into tarot, which again is a wonderful, if you like, symbolic tool. And I think symbols bring to life sort of feelings of what other possible worlds there could be. And then I had an experience myself when my father died. And I really felt that I'd been touched by either him, his spirit, or by an angel of some description. And from that moment onwards, I really did sort of feel that there was something else out there. And having been to some of these places, particularly obviously in Europe and in England, I have had the sort of experience of feeling that there are ghosts, or feeling that there is something spiritual, or feeling there is something sacred. And I think people are getting more interested in sort of trying to discover what that is. And, of course, we can't prove anything, but it doesn't really matter, because when you believe or whether you've experienced some sort of supernatural force, then you don't need to have any scientific proof.
Right. What do you think about vampires? Is this all drawn out of maybe there was a nasty person that lived years ago and Hollywood has just twisted the story?
Yeah, I think there's two lines of thought there, because when I was having to write about the vampire places, to be honest, I felt it was all very much a sort of fictional, imaginary thing. All going back to to good old Vlad the Impaler, who was, and Bran Castle in Transylvania was one of his haunts, and also Snagov Lake in Romania. And I think there's a lot of legend mixed with this. But when looking further and researching further worldwide into the vampire myth, if you like, it does seem that there are very, very many legends and myths surrounding blood drinking, if you like, or blood sucking beasts, animals, and people. And I think there's a sort of, as you say, it's been kind of Hollywoodized up to a certain point. But I think there's a lot of old legends and old superstitions and real kind of beliefs that people were actually vampires, because in Italy they found graves of people with stakes through their heart, also in Greece as well, with stakes through their heart. And these graves, these old bones, these old remains are dating back to the sort of 14th, 15th century. So there is a belief in vampires well before anything to do with Dracula. It's fascinating, and it does seem to be that it crosses all boundaries. It's not just Europe.
We're talking to Sarah Bartlett, who help compile and did you write all of the descriptions of these places in the book?
Yes, I did actually. Okay. I didn't visit them all because I didn't have time.
Right.
Because the deadlines were rather tight. I have visited some of the ones in Europe, obviously in the UK, but there are some, in the States and obviously worldwide, which I had to do a lot of research on. And I think by using one's, not just research, but by trying to experience that place through one's imagination, you can, up to a point. And I think that's why this book is great, because it's not just about, here's another travel book, I've got to go there. You can actually read it and I think feel that you are getting the energy of that place.
Right. I was surprised to read, I didn't realize there were so many supernatural places in France. Yeah,
well, I suppose I'm a bit biased because I'm in Europe. But there are actually. France is a very, is a very sort of special country in the sense that it has been so sort of mixed up in so many different cultures and so many wars going on there in history, that it has an awful lot of superstition surrounding, it's all the wars of religion and things like that were going on. And I think because of its heritage and its extraordinarily elegance and power, and the big witch hunts that were going on there as well. It all comes together in France. It's sort of, you feel like, okay, there's a lot of witchy sort of places in England as well, and also in Germany. But this whole sort of hub of the real witchcraft and the dark arts and the occult arts really sort of grew out of a lot of what was going on in Paris in the sort of early Renaissance.
Right.
So, and I think then, of course, it spread across to the States, and I think that a lot of the darker vampire, occult, ghostly sort of stuff in cemeteries in the States is fascinating too, because it went across from Europe with the New England settlers and sort of spread from there. But then, of course, you have your own Native American traditions too, which have a different layer on top or below of the sacredness of the land. And I think this is another interesting fact about going around different countries throughout the world and seeing all these completely different landscapes, but which hold some sort of sacredness to the people who are indigenous there.
All right. Sarah Bartlett, the author of National Geographic's Guide to the World's Supernatural Places. Co-host Casey has a question for you.
I did. I've always been interested in the supernatural, and I've always watched these shows with all these different creatures. I was just wondering, do you have a soft spot for a certain particular creature, if at all?
A soft spot for a certain creature.
I didn't quite catch that, Casey.
Do you have like a favorite like supernatural creature at all? Like whether it's vampires or werewolves, like just like the stories behind them, or maybe if you wish they were real or something? Is there a certain
I think
one?
For me, the most the thing which is most evocative for me is it's not so much I think vampires are fascinating, but I'm not particularly interested in that side. For me, the most important thing is the sense of ghosts and spirits. And, somewhere like, for example, where I know very well and have been many times is Versailles, Versailles Gardens near Paris. And the ghost of Marie Antoinette, the sense of Louis XV, who can be sometimes glimpsed dancing through the orangery with his mistress, Madame de Pompadour. And it's this kind of stuff which is very fascinating, and I've been doing a lot of research on that to see how many sightings, if you like, or experiences people have. And I've been working a lot with kind of ghost trails and supernatural events in Paris particularly. So that's my area really at the moment. And I'm really hoping that this book will sort of bring to the rest of the world a bit more of what's going on the other side there, I say.
Do you have shows in Europe on the BBC or whatever the French networks might be that explore?
I'm only at the moment. I only appear on Radio 2, BBC Radio 2.
Right.
Doing astrology.
Are there television shows overseas, though, that we have Ghost Hunters and all of these shows that explore these things? Do you have the same over there?
Not really. I mean, the BBC do the occasional kind of, investigation into. I think they've had a few series of ghosts around England and stuff like that. The French don't do it so much at all. The French are very difficult in their TV because it's all very sort of strictly kind of formulated, and it's really the UK that does the best because it's much more independent.
Right.
And I think the programs in the UK are brilliant, and there are series of let's investigate ghost busting in the Highlands or something.
Sure.
And so yes, there are programs, but to be honest, it's very hard for anyone who works in my field. And I don't know whether one calls that sort of the alternative field or the spiritual field or whatever.
I think we call it I think we call it paranormal over here. It's the paranormal.
To me is just I think paranormal is such a sad word because it implies that it's something. To me, the supernatural is normal.
Okay. Right.
So yeah, I know the paranormal is a very kind of specific word, but I think for anyone who is normal like me, it doesn't sort of work, that word. So.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being with us. You can always tell I've had fun because I lost track of time. And
okay, well, I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, not at all.
I loved every second of it.
No, thank you for being with us. And is the book in all the major bookstores now?
I hope so.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks very much.
All right.